Okay, I know my timer's already past the 5-minute mark. I started it a little early because I shouldn't need that much time, but I do need to try to get a comment posted. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, it worked. That makes me so happy. Okay, and I've been adding this lately on my live stream, so I will continue because ready. That's weird. There we go. Okay. I'm just trying to check what I wrote. It looks right to me. Alright, we are almost ready. Almost ready. Let me leave this where it is and go to the book page. Oh, time is up. Let's start the show. Hello, everyone. This is Venus Brown. I am back with another live reading from Margaret Atwood's book, The Testaments. Now, we're in, what's it, part 17, I think? Part 16. We're in part 16 called Pearl Girls. And this is kind of going over, what we're going to be reading today is going to go over the last parts of what she does to get into Gilead. And then we're going to go and do part 17 called Perfect Teeth. This is written from Lydia's perspective. Because this time we're going to be talking about how this dentist is actually dealt with. So, just a little brusher upper. I will be adding on a section at some point dealing with some of the stuff that we saw in the last episode or so on the TV series, The Testaments. Because just a lot I wanted to talk about. And part of what happened in episode 9, the penultimate episode, is actually covered in one of the chapters that we're getting ready to read, and I did not realize it. When I watched it on the show, I was very taken aback. Which, now that I've reread it, I was like, "Why?" I don't remember feeling that way reading it, but I definitely felt that way watching it. And it's a different person doing these things, but it is the same scenario. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. And we'll talk about some of the other stuff that I had been thinking about when I watched the episodes, and that I have noticed other people chattering about on the internet, along with some of the ideas that people had, and the stuff that we found out after watching the last episode. versus what we still don't know. So lots of stuff we still don't know. And yes, they are very dramatically changing the contents of the book, but they are doing a lot of pulling certain parts of the books and using them in different places and different ways. And this is one of the things that we're going to cover when we get to that part that I talked about. So let's go ahead and get started. We are on chapter, is it 44, I think? I have the page number written down though, so, let's go to the read scene. No, what did I do? Okay, all right. So it is, okay, this page. There. Chapter 44. When are the Pearl Girls going to show up again? I asked in the morning of the 5th day. Maybe they've rejected me. Be patient, said Garth. As Ada said, we've sent people into Gilead this way before. Some of them made it in, but a couple were too eager. They let themselves be scooped on the first pass. And then they got flushed before they even crossed the border. So, that's not promising. They were eager to get involved. They got caught up before they really should have, before they were really prepared. And they were flushed before they even crossed the border. And that doesn't sound like, oh, they were let go. To me, that sounds like they were gotten rid of, which is just frightening. This is one of the things I had a really hard time with on the book, is the idea of these teenagers. They are teenagers. They're kids going through this stuff, doing things that are very dangerous, putting their lives at risk, and sometimes so badly at risk that it was hard. This part I'm not as leery about. It's the other part where they try to get back in later on. That part really freaked me out. I was like, these are teenagers. Why are we doing this? This is crazy. It's so dangerous. But anyway, we'll get to that part later on when we get to that part. This is not the part we're on. All right, so they got flushed before they even crossed the border. Thanks, I said dolefully. That makes me feel confident. I'm going to screw this up. I know it. Keep cool. You'll be fine, said Garth. You can do it. We're all counting on you. No pressure, right? I said. You say jump, I say how high. I was being a pain, but I couldn't stop myself. Later that same day, the Pearl Girls came our way again. They loitered around, passing by, then crossed the street and walked in the other direction, looking in store windows. Then, when Garth went off to get us some burgers, they came over and started talking to me. He went over to get them some burgers, so I'm pretty sure she gets scooped before she gets the burgers. That means she doesn't even get a chance to eat. Okay. Yes, spoiler, obviously. But anyway. They asked what my name was, and I said Jade. Then they introduced themselves. Aunt Beatrice was the brunette. Aunt Dove was the freckled redhead. They asked if I was happy, and I shook my head no, and then they looked at my tattoo and said I was a very special person to have undergone all that suffering for God. And they were glad I knew that God cherished me. And Gilead would cherish me too, because I was a precious flower. Every woman was a precious flower, and especially every girl of my age. And if I was in Gilead, I would be treated like the special girl I was, and protected. And no one, no man, would ever be able to hurt me. And did that man who was with me, did he hit me? This is just, Like, these girls have been working under Gilead for a while. They know that men hurt these girls. And they're selling the idea that they'll go to Gilead, they'll be so protected, and no man will ever hurt them. When in reality, almost everyone that is hurt, that is severely hurt in Gilead, is hurt by a man because of a man. Like, granted, they do things that maybe they know is against the rules or they think might be against the rules and they get punished for it. But it's the men. It's the men that are fucking ensuring that these narrow-minded rules are followed so strictly. It is the men that are conducting the punishments. Even if they hand them to a bunch of women that do, what did they call them? I keep thinking scavenges, but that's not what I'm talking about. Salvages. Like, even if it's the woman doing that, it is under the rule of the men. It is under the decisions of the men for the most part. Although I would say the ants are heavily involved also sometimes, but not always. It's just like, and really a lot of the things that really hurt the girls, the sexual assaults, the violence, the things like that is at the hands of the men, like quite literally, physically at the hands of the men. So saying that no man would be able to hurt them, really like, oh, you're just straight up lying to her face. I hated to lie about Garth like that, but I nodded. And does he make you do bad things? I looked stupid, so Aunt Beatrice, the taller one, said, does he make you have sex? I gave the tiniest nod, as if I was ashamed of those things. And does he pass you around to other men? That was going too far. I couldn't imagine Garth doing anything like that, so I shook my head no. And Aunt Beatrice said, maybe he hadn't tried that yet, but if I stayed with him, he would. Because that's what men like him did. They got hold of young girls, pretended to love them, but soon enough, they were selling them to whoever would pay. And that is true of some men, but not all of them, and their Gilead men would be every bit as guilty of doing shit like that. So anyway, I'm just very, very fucking angsty at the Gilead men right now, as I usually am. I just can't help it. Free love, Aunt Beatrice said scornfully. It's never free. There's always a price. It's never even love, said Aunt Dove. Why are you with him? I didn't know where else to go, I said, and I burst into tears. There was violence at home. There is never violence in our homes in Gilead. Another, like, just straight up bald-faced lie, like the biggest lie you could fucking tell. There's never violence in our homes in Gilead. Like, in the first place, all this strict requiring people to follow a certain role and do everything a certain way creates a certain sense of violence in the first place. They're all afraid to be themselves, to do things that they want to do, to speak, to talk about things that they need to talk about. They're so afraid because they know that they will be harmed, they will be hurt physically with violence. That is violence all in itself. But also, they do get physically hurt. They do get emotionally hurt. They are controlled all the time. All of that is a type of violence. So saying, oh, you'll never be hurt in your home. Like, oh no, that would never... Like, are you fucking serious? And the worst thing is that it is state-sanctioned violence. So they can't even do anything about it. They're being told they're being protected. They're being told that they'll be safe. They're being told that this is the best thing for them. and then they're being treated with violence, and that violence is protected by the state. They can't do shit about it. Like, that is just, oy. So yeah, a little pissy about this stuff, because what the fuck? Just straight up fucking lying your asses off to get these girls to come over to your side. And intentionally taking advantage of vulnerable women that are desperate. I lost my place, so I'm trying to find it. Okay, I found it. Then Garth came back and acted angry. He grabbed my arm, the left one with the scarification on it, and pulled me to my feet, and I screamed because it hurt. He told me to shut up and said we were going. Aunt Beatrice said, "Could I have a word with you?" So see, she still didn't get her burger, so she's going without any food, because that is the last time that they interact with each other. She and Garth moved away, out of hearing, and Aunt Dove handed me a tissue because I was crying. And she said, "May I hug you on behalf of God?" And I nodded. Aunt Beatrice came back and said, "We can go now." Aunt Dove said, "Praise be." Garth had walked away. He didn't even look back. I didn't get to say goodbye to him, which made me cry even more. "It's all right. You're safe now," said Aunt Dove. "Be strong." Which was the kind of thing the refugee women from Gilead were told at Sanctuary, except they were going in the other direction. Aunt Beatrice and Aunt Dove walked very close to me, one on either side, so nobody would bother me, they said. "That young man sold you," said Aunt Dove with contempt. "He did?" I asked. Garth hadn't told me he'd intended to do that, which it doesn't surprise me. He's trying to kind of keep things under wraps and trying to keep it a little surprising. The more surprised and upset she is, the more it looks realistic. And that's the kind of thing that they're expecting these men to do. So it makes it more realistic. All I had to do was ask. That's how much he valued you. You're lucky he sold you to us and not some sex ring, said Aunt Beatrice. He wanted a lot of money, but I got him down. In the end, he took half. Filthy infidel, said Aunt Dove. He said you were a virgin, which would make your price higher, said Aunt Beatrice. But that's not what you told us, is it? I thought fast. I wanted you to feel sorry for me, I whispered, so you would take me with you. The two of them glanced at each other, across me. We understand, said Aunt Dove. But from now on, you must tell the truth. I nodded and said I would. So in this freaking, one or two sentences, they verified that she is probably a virgin, that she was lying when she nodded that she had been passed around, or that she had been taken advantage of for sex, and that she is worth more because she's a virgin, which we're going to see a little bit more of later, or hear a little bit more of later. They took me back to the condo where they were staying. I wondered whether it was the same condo that the dead Pearl girl had been found in. But my plan right then was to say as little as possible. I didn't want to blow it. I also didn't want to be found attached to a doorknob. The condo was very modern. It had 2 bathrooms, each with a bathtub and a shower, and huge glass windows, and a big balcony with real trees growing on it in concrete planters. I soon found out, though, that the door to the balcony was locked. I was dying to get into the shower. I reeked. of my own layers of dirt, skin flakes, and sweat, and feet in old socks, and the stinky mud under the bridge, and her frying fat smell of the fast food places. The condo was so clean and filled with citrus air freshener that I thought my smell must really stand out. When Aunt Beatrice asked if I wanted a shower, I nodded quickly. "But I should be careful," said Aunt Dove, "because of my arm. I shouldn't get it wet because the scabs might come off." I must admit I was touched by their concern, phony though it was. They didn't want to take a festering mess to Gilead instead of a pearl. When I came out of the shower wrapped up in a white fluffy towel, my old clothes were gone. "They were so filthy there was no point in even washing them," said Aunt Beatrice. And they'd laid out a silvery gray dress just like theirs. "I'm supposed to wear this," I said, "but I'm not a pearl girl. I thought the pearl girls were you." "The ones who gather the pearls and the pearls who are gathered are all pearls," said Aunt Dove. "You are a precious pearl, a pearl of great price." "That's why we've gone to such risks for you," said Aunt Beatrice. "We have so many enemies here. But don't worry, Jade. We'll keep you safe." In any case, she said even though I wasn't an official pearl girl, I would need to wear the dress in order to get out of Canada, because the Canadian authorities were clamping down on the export of underage converts. They were viewing it as human trafficking, which was quite wrong of them, she added. Like, seriously, that is the very fucking definition of human trafficking. Like, so much of this, like, I get they're trying to fucking proselytize for their extremist regime religion, but they really are just straight up telling blatant lies. It's wrong of them for them to call this human trafficking. It is exactly human trafficking. You are taking advantage of desperate girls that are in desperate situations, convincing them that you will do the right thing by them, you will protect them, you will keep them safe and keep them out of violence, which they've probably been through a lot of. And then you are escorting them over the border to be permanent slaves in their fucking system. Because those pearl girls are not likely to be coming out in any way other than dead, unless they manage to get Mayday to help them get out. Definition of human trafficking? Come on. All right. Then Aunt Dove reminded her that she should not use the word export, as girls were not commodities. And Aunt Beatrice apologized and said she had meant to say the facilitating of cross-border movement. And they both smiled. So another thing, they're trying to claim, oh, we're not treating these girls as commodities, but that's exactly what they're doing. These girls are all commodities. That is why they're trying so hard to get them into their country. They are a commodity. They are valuable pearl girls, pearls of great price, because they are a commodity to these people. They shouldn't be, but that's what they are. They are being used for their ability to do whatever it is that they want these girls to do as pearl girls, and possibly for their value of possibly being fertile. And then they can put them in whatever position they decide that they deem worthy of these fertile girls. And people keep insisting, oh, they would just automatically be handmaids. I'm not so convinced of that. I think I've talked about this before. I just don't know if I've talked about it on live stream. But the people that were made handmaids at the beginning and throughout, they were considered to be engaging in crimes, not just sinful. They consider everybody sinful. They all do sinful things and they'll get punishments for them. And even their weird laws that shouldn't be considered sinful of reading and writing and stuff like that have specific punishments, like losing a finger, whatever, things like that. But that doesn't mean you're going to necessarily automatically become a handmaid. They were making girls handmaids for things like having abortions because they considered that murder, for getting divorced, for being married to a divorced person, that kind of stuff, for violating their husband in whatever way. Those were the kinds of things they were saying that were criminal and would gain them the passage to being a handmaid. If they were not in the upper echelons with these commanders, and they were not considered criminal, but they were fruitful, as far as I understand, they could stay in the econo class, and they could still give birth and stuff like that as econo people. But the laws are very narrow, they are very stringent, so that they can create more handmaids by saying that they're criminal. But I don't think coming in as they are, unless they have records saying that they have had abortions, that they killed somebody, that they were violent with their husband, that they committed some kind of fraud to Gilead, that they whatever. You get what I'm saying. So outside of that, I don't think they really have to make them handmaids. I do find the idea in the TV show where they're making them plums that are competing for commanders and close to commanders and stuff like that far-fetched. I think for Becca, she could get away with it in a way because her dad was so well respected in the community as a professional. But somebody who comes over as a Pearl girl that's already considered sinful, that turns out to be fertile, I don't think they would be competing for fucking commander or possibly to become commander positions. That they would be, I would think, put into the econo class if they are not forced to be handmaids, if they think that they are criminal in Gilead's sense of the word. Anyway, where was I? The human trafficking thing. The export thing where they were talking about them being commodities. I'm not underage, I said. I'm 16. And here in America, that would still be considered underage because you're not considered an adult until you're 18. But I know a lot of places that the legal adult age is 16. And there are some states in our country that the legal age for a lot of adult things is considered 16. We have certain federal laws when it comes to adulthood that would automatically say 18. But we have some state laws for certain things that are 16. Anyway, do you have any identification? Aunt Beatrice asked. I shook my head no. We didn't think so, said Aunt Dove, so we will arrange that for you. But to avoid any problems, you'll have papers identifying you as Aunt Dove, said Aunt Beatrice. The Canadians know she came in, so when you cross the border, they'll think you are her. But I'm a lot younger, I said. I don't look like her. Your papers will have your picture. And Aunt Beatrice, the real Aunt Dove, said Aunt Beatrice. The real Aunt Dove, she said, would stay in Canada and leave with the next girl who was gathered. taking the name of an incoming Pearl girl. They were used to switching around like that. So, I was going to say something. Now I don't remember what it was. I don't know, like something with this, that they're getting in based not at all based on who they are or what they look like. They're getting in based surely on completely on this paperwork. Automatically assuming that none of them know your face or whatever. I understand why they say that. I understand that there are a lot of people that they don't pay attention to that stuff. They really don't notice a person's name versus face when they think they all look a certain way. But that's still risky as hell. You know, some girl might have a certain name that comes through and just have some very distinctive characteristics or marking that might cue a person in. So even though most of the time they would think that they all look the same, they might cue in on some certain perspective. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. It's just a bit risky. The Canadians can't tell us apart, said Aunt Dove. We all look the same to them. Both of them laughed as if they were delighted at having played such pranks. Then Aunt Dove said that the most important extra reason for wearing the silvery dress was to smooth my entrance into Gilead, because women didn't wear men's clothing there. I said leggings weren't men's clothing, and they said calmly but firmly that yes, they were, and it was in the Bible. They were an abomination, and if I wanted to join Gilead, I would have to accept that. And they are very madly twisting that that passage in the Bible, but this is what they do. They twist all kinds of, they ignore most things, they cherry pick what they want, and then every now and then they'll twist some of what they've cherry picked, and that's what they've done here, saying leggings are men's clothing and therefore it's an abomination. That is a very twisted, stretched version of what that passage actually says. I reminded myself not to argue with them, so I put on the dress, also the pearl necklace, which was fake, just as Melanie had said. There was a white sun hat, but I only needed to put it on to go outside, they said. Hair was permitted inside a dwelling unless there were men around, because men had a thing about hair. It made them spin out of control, they said. And my hair was particularly inflammatory because it was greenish. It's only a tint. It will wear off, I said apologetically, so they'd know I'd already renounced my rash hair color choice. It's all right, dear, said Aunt Dove. No one will see it. The dress actually felt quite good after my dirty old clothes. It was cool and silky. Aunt Beatrice ordered in pizza for lunch, which we had with ice cream from the freezer. I said I was surprised that they were eating junk food. Wasn't Gilead against it, especially for women? It's part of our test as Pearl Girls, said Aunt Dove. We're supposed to sample the flesh-pot temptations of the outside world in order to understand them and then reject them in our hearts. She took another bite of pizza. Anyway, it will be my last chance to try them, said Aunt Beatrice, who had finished off the pizza and was eating her ice cream. I honestly don't see what's wrong with ice cream, as long as it has no chemicals. Aunt Dove gave her a reproachful look. Aunt Beatrice licked her spoon. I said no to the ice cream. I was too nervous. I also no longer liked it. It reminded me too much of Melanie. So, the ice cream thing came up in the TV series. So, yeah, itty-bitty spoiler. But they didn't treat it as something that was sinful junk food. They were actually serving it in the cafe. But I do remember that Shunammite was trying to get Daisy in trouble for getting it. But I think that's, I don't know. I think that's more of like, oh, you're trying to like take something that's meant as a privilege as if you're some privileged girl when you shouldn't have, or something like that. Even though they were the ones that suggested she go and, she was the one that suggested she go and get ice cream with Hulda. Anyway. And I think also, though, that really the ice cream should probably depend on how it's made, whether they would think that it's good enough for Gilead or not. And I also would imagine that how it's made in Canada is probably not what they consider good enough for their bodies or whatever. Anyway, that night before going to bed, I examined myself in the bathroom mirror. Despite the shower and the food, I was wrecked. I had dark circles under my eyes. I'd lost weight. I really did look like a waif who needed to be rescued. It was wonderful to sleep in a real bed instead of under a bridge. I missed Garth, though. Each night, I was inside the bedroom, they locked my door, and they took care that during my waking hours, I was never alone. Okay, so this is going to be a slight spoiler for the end of the Testaments TV series. Eventually, at the end of the TV series, Garth ends up locking Becca into, like, he takes her up to a room, puts her to bed, which is nice. It seems very nice and thoughtful, honestly. He's not messing with her or doing anything with her. And then he closes the door. But this is where I have the problem, is that he locked the door. And I get he has reasons for doing it, but it just felt very not cool, like very not cool. But that's what that reminded me of. They said they locked the door while they were out, and then anyway, it was just like it definitely like triggered a little in me when I saw him lock that door. I was like, no. All right. And they took care that during my waking hours I was never alone. The next couple of days were spent in getting my Aunt Dove papers ready. I had my picture and fingerprints taken so they could make me a passport. The passport was certified at the Gilead Embassy in Ottawa and then sent back to the consulate by special courier. They'd put in Aunt Dove's identifying numbers, but with my picture and physical data. And they'd even infiltrated the Canadian immigration database where Aunt Dove had been recorded coming in, removed the real Aunt Dove from it temporarily, and posted my own data plus my iris scan and thumbprint. We have many friends inside the Canadian government infrastructure, said Aunt Beatrice. You'd be amazed. So many well-wishers, said Aunt Dove. And then both of them said, praise be. And, oh gosh, this is something I think during the Handmaid's Tale, another spoiler for the Handmaid's Tale TV series, when Canada was having a particular problem with kind of protesters and people that were more on Gilead's side that were in Canada, that really bothered me. Like, you are in Canada, yet you're for Gilead, even though you know the fucked up shit that Gilead's doing. And part of me wants to say, well, if you like Gilead so much, why don't you take your happy ass over there and live their fucking life with Gilead? But then, you know that they're not doing that because they know their lives would be in danger. They do know that there's bad shit about Gilead. So they want to like follow parts of Gilead that they think are good, yet they're not willing to put their lives on the line and actually go be part of Gilead because they know that puts their lives in danger. And I just find that as just some kind of fucking a little bit hypocritical, cowardly, like, I don't know, like, it just really bothers me that they're trying to take these fucked up, idealized visions of what they think humanity should be based on Gilead's ideals and force them onto another fucking community, another fucking government, another group of people. Anyway, the helping, maybe, but the fucking protesting and intentionally harming other people and intentionally turning people in and shit like that, that's where I was like, you are a bunch of fucking cowardly assholes. You're willing to toe the fucking Gilead line in Canada to harm other people, but you're not willing to go over there and be part of it yourselves because, in my opinion, because they're cowards. Because they don't really, truly believe the whole thing. They just want the pieces that they like and throw out the rest. So many well-wishers, said Aunt Dove. Then both of them said, praise be. They'd put an embossed stamp on one of the pages that said Pearl Girl. That meant I would be let into Gilead immediately. No questions asked. It was like being a diplomat, said Aunt Beatrice. Now, I was Aunt Dove, but a different Aunt Dove. I had a Pearl Girl's missionary, temporary Canadian visa that I had to give back to the border authorities when exiting. It was simple, said Aunt Beatrice. Look down a lot when you're going through, said Aunt Dove. It hides the features. Anyway, it's the modest thing to do. So we got to normalize those things that are not normal where she's from. We got to normalize the fact that they're being expected to hide their features in Gilead, not just because not wanting people to know who she is and stuff, but because there is this thing about keeping features from being very noticeable for these men that are just, their desires are just going to be inflamed by these women showing their characteristics. Like, give me a fucking break. Oh, people. Aunt Beatrice and I were driven to the airport in a black Gilead government car, and I passed border control with no trouble. We didn't even get body searched. The plane was a private jet. It had an eye with wings on it. It was silver, but it looked dark to me, like a huge, dark bird waiting to fly me where? Into a blank. Ada and Elijah had tried to teach me as much as possible about Gilead. I'd seen the documentaries and the TV footage, but I still could not picture what might be waiting for me there. I didn't feel ready for this at all. I remembered Sanctucare and the women refugees. I'd looked at them, but I hadn't really seen them. I hadn't considered what it was like to leave a place that you knew and lose everything and travel into the unknown. How hollow and dark that must feel, except for maybe the little glimmer of hope that had allowed you to take such a chance. Very soon, I too was going to feel like that. I would be in a dark place, carrying a tiny spark of light, trying to find my way. Okay, chapter 45. We were late taking off, and this chapter is going to be a little bit shorter, or maybe a lot shorter, but either way. We were late taking off, and I worried that I had been found out and we would be stopped after all. But once we were in the air, I felt lighter. I'd never been in a plane before. I was very excited at first. but it clouded over and the view became monotonous. I must have gone to sleep because soon Aunt Beatrice was nudging me gently and saying, "We're almost there." I looked out the little window. The plane was flying lower, and I could see some pretty-looking buildings down below, with spires and towers, and a winding river and the sea. Then the plane landed. We went down a set of steps they lowered from the door. It was hot and dry, with a wind blowing. Our long, silvery skirts were pushed against our legs. Standing on the tarmac, there was a double line of men in black uniforms, and we walked between the lines, arm in arm. "Don't look at their faces," she whispered. So I focused on their uniforms, but I could sense eyes, eyes, all over me like hands. I'd never felt so much at risk in that way, not even under the bridge with Garth, and with strangers all around. Then all these men saluted. "What is this?" I murmured to Aunt Beatrice. "Why are they saluting?" "Because my mission was successful," said Aunt Beatrice. "I brought back a precious pearl. That's you." We were taken to a black car and driven into the city. There weren't very many people on the street, and the women all had those long dresses in different colors, just like in the documentaries. I even saw some handmaids walking 2 by 2. There was no lettering on the stores, only pictures on the signs. A boot, a fish, a tooth. The car paused in front of a gate in a brick wall. We were waved through by 2 guards. The car went in and stopped, and they opened the doors for us. We got out, and Aunt Beatrice linked arms through mine and said, "There isn't time to show you where you'll sleep. The plane was too late. We need to go straight to the chapel for the Thanksgiving. Just do what I say." I knew this would be some kind of ceremony about the Pearl Girls. Ada had warned me about it. Aunt Dove had explained it to me. But I hadn't paid close enough attention, so I didn't really know what to expect. We went into the chapel. I was already full. It was already full. Older women in the brown uniforms of the aunts. Younger ones in Pearl Girls' dresses. Each Pearl Girl had a girl around my age with her, also in a temporary silver dress like mine. Right up at the front, there was a big gold-framed baby Nicole picture, which did not cheer me up at all. As Aunt Beatrice steered me down the aisle, everyone was singing, "Bringing in the pearls, bringing in the pearls, we will come rejoicing, bringing in the pearls." They smiled and nodded at me. They seemed really happy. Maybe this won't be so bad, I thought. We all sat down, then one of the older women went up to the pulpit. "Aunt Lydia," Aunt Beatrice whispered, "our main founder." I recognized her from the picture that Ada had shown me. Thought she was quite a lot older than the picture, or so it seemed to me. "We are here to give thanks for the safe return of our Pearl Girls from their missions, from wherever they have been in the world, going to and fro in it, and doing Gilead's good work. We salute their physical bravery and their spiritual courage, and we offer the thanks of our hearts. I now declare that our returning Pearl Girls are no longer supplicants, but full aunts with all the powers and privileges associated thereto." We know they will do their duty wherever and however that duty calls. And everyone said, Amen. Pearl girls, present the pearls you have gathered, said Aunt Lydia. First, the mission to Canada. So we're talking about Jade now. Jade, Hannah, baby Nicole, or not Hannah, Holly, baby Nicole, Daisy. How many names shall we give her? All the names. Okay, anyway. And then what was the other one in the TV show? Marguerite, which apparently Marguerite in certain languages also means Daisy. So Daisy, Marguerite, Daisy. Anyway. She took off her string of pearls. Oh, no, wait a minute. I have not got that far. Stand up, Aunt Beatrice whispered. She led me up to the front, holding me by the left arm. Her hand was on God love, and it hurt. She took off her string of pearls, laid it in a big shallow dish in front of Aunt Lydia, and said, I return these pearls to you, pure as the state in which I received them, and may they be blessed to the service of the next pearl girl who wears them with pride during her mission. Thanks to the divine will, I have added to Gilead's treasure trove of valuable gems. May I present Jade, a precious pearl of great price. Saved from certain destruction, may she be purified from worldly pollution, cleansed of unchaste desires, cauterized from sin, and consecrated to whatever service is allotted to her in Gilead. She put her hands on my shoulders and pushed me into the kneeling position. I hadn't been expecting this. I almost fell over sideways. What are you doing? I whispered. Shh, said Aunt Beatrice. Be quiet. And then Aunt Lydia said, Welcome to Ardua Hall, Jade, and may you be blessed in the choice you have made. Under his eye, per ardua cum estris. She placed her hand on my head and then took it off again, nodded at me, and gave a dry smile. Everyone repeated, Welcome to the pearl of great price, per ardua cum estris. Amen. What am I doing here? I thought. This place is weird as fuck. Okay, so let's go to the live scene for a little bit. I don't think I'm going to give any spoilers, really. Well, a little bit. Because in the TV show... so on here, they all come over, they come over at, I think, a much later point than they do in the show. In the show, Daisy is already over there. She's already done all of this. She's already gotten over there, and she's gotten in trouble and got paired off with, well, I think she got in trouble. But I also think that based on bias from having read the story. So she gets over there, and in the show she's already over there before Agnes has her period and stuff like that, and before Becca did what she did, all of that. So it's a very different situation. They also started the show off way later, where Tabitha had already died and Paula was now in position. There were obviously several things that were different. But also, she said automatically that these Pearl girls were going to automatically become aunts, which we're not so sure that's exactly what's going on the show. We already know that, another spoiler, that when Daisy got her period, they switched her from being a pearl to a plum. She still has to do all the chores and shit like that, but now she's being a plum, or a green technically, because she's on her period. So it appears she's going to be competing with these men, that the other girls that go to this school, which is supposed to be a prestigious school for the higher echelons. But she's now been made a green with these girls so that she can compete with these commanders and soon to be commander positions and stuff like that, which I find a little odd, but whatever. They also changed. Becca in the show was only competing for people that were not yet commanders, or were newly commanders, something like that, where all the other girls were competing for the high commanders and stuff like that. The commanders and the high commanders. Whereas she, because she was not a commander's daughter, was competing for fledglings, basically. So Garth probably would have been perfectly reasonable for them to try to match her up with, even as being a new commander. But the other people they were trying to match her up with, that were already commanders and high commanders, that wouldn't have gone along with the story. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with this next part. Okay, so back to the reading scene. This is part 17, called Perfect Teeth. The Ardua Hall holograph. And like I said, this is done from Lydia's perspective, because the aunts are going to do away with this guy. My bottle of blue drawing ink, my fountain pen, my notebook pages with their margins trimmed to fit within their hiding place. Through these I entrust my message to you, my reader. But what sort of message is it? Some days I see myself as the recording angel, collecting together all the sins of Gilead, including mine. On other days, I shrug off this high moral tone. Am I not a fond, merely a dealer in sordid gossip? I'll never know your verdict on that, I fear. Which I was thinking about this when I read it. It reminds me a little bit of the situation in Bridgerton with the with Lady Penn. I think that I can't. Anyway, she writes this gossip column. So it is gossip, it is considered gossip, but it is also like a main way for the young ladies of the town to actually get information about what is going on. She started the gossip column because she was a young lady that had almost no information about this world that she was in, and that she was being pushed into with these marriages and stuff like that, and she felt very like she had no control over it. She had no control, she had no information, she had no knowledge. And so she started this column to give these other young ladies information that they never had, that they were never given. And she thought that was important. And I think in that way, there's this fine line between what is gossip, what is information, so that you can come more prepared. And it is gossip, but it is also valuable information. And so in that respect, I could see how this could be considered that same kind of way. Is this just me spreading gossip, telling everybody all the dirty laundry about the people in Gilead? Or are you going to take it more seriously as not just gossip, but as important information that's going to help? Anyway, just my thoughts on the matter. My larger fear that all my efforts will prove futile, and Gilead will last for 1,000 years. Most of the time, that is what it feels like here. Far away from the war, in the still heart of the tornado. So peaceful the streets, so tranquil, so orderly, yet underneath the deceptively placid surfaces, a tremor, like that near a high voltage power line. We are stretched thin, all of us. We vibrate, we quiver, we're always on alert. Reign of terror, they used to say. But terror does not exactly reign. Instead, it paralyzes, hence the unnatural quiet. And I think this paragraph to me so well encapsulates why that TV show of the Testaments might seem on its surface so Bridgerton-esque and so nice. And Bridgerton itself seems so Bridgerton-esque and so nice. Yet under the surface, we're talking about something where people are expected to play a role so narrowly. They're expected to follow the rigid ideas so narrowly that it's like they're on a high voltage power line, stretched thin to the point that they're vibrating, quivering, always on alert, but always with this chance that they might snap, that they might break. All this pent-up energy inside that they can't release because the narrow expectations are so fucking strict, so freaking perilous. So all those people that thought, oh, Testaments was so boring at the beginning and everything, like, this is what's lying underneath all that prettiness, all that prestige, all that prissiness, is that these people are all playing a role and they're all trying to follow these narrow expectations to a point that they are so fucking stretched thin that they could fucking snap at any time. Like, that's what it is. And that it paralyzes them. Like, there's so much fear in them stepping outside those roles that it almost paralyzes them, that it does paralyze them. Hence the unnatural quiet. And we see that in Handmaids too. Like in Handmaids, when they start out at the beginning, it talks about how all this stuff, it looks so nice, it looks so pristine, it looks like something you might see in a magazine from the before times. But underneath that pretty surface, there's all this fucking tension, all this fear, and all these people that are paralyzed into being something and someone they're not, into towing the fucking line. But there are small mercies. Yesterday I viewed on the closed-circuit television in Commander Judd's office their persecution, presided over by Aunt Elizabeth. Commander Judd had ordered in some coffee, excellent coffee of a kind not normally available. I avoided asking him how he had come by it. He added a shot of rum to his and asked if I would like some. I declined. He then said he had a tender heart and weak nerves, and needed to brace himself, as he found it a strain on his system to watch these bloodthirsty spectacles, which is like, you men fucking formed this system. You created this regime. You made it so that these bloodthirsty spectacles were a requirement for breaking the laws of Gilead should you not be a fruitful woman. Which, yes, does mean that when the men break these laws of Gilead, they are probably just going to be killed because they're not fruitful women. And when the women of Gilead break these laws, if they're fruitful, they might be spared, but most likely they're going to be part of these bloodthirsty spectacles or sent to the colonies, which in some ways might be worse because it's long drawn out death rather than a more immediate violent one, which both I would say are violent. I do understand, I said, but it is our duty to see justice done. He sighed, drank up, and poured himself another shot. 2 condemned men were to be persecuted. An angel who'd been caught selling gray market lemons smuggled in through Maine, and Dr. Grove the dentist. The angel's real crime was not the lemons, however. He'd been accused of taking bribes from Mayday and aiding several handmaids in their successful flight across our various borders. But the commanders did not want this fact publicized. It would give people ideas. The official line was that there were no corrupt angels and certainly no fleeing handmaids. For why would one renounce God's kingdom to plunge into the flaming pit? So this is another thing that I've heard chatter online about. Another spoiler for Handmaids and Testaments, the reality of these people not knowing who June is, not knowing who baby Nicole is, shit like that, that the fact that Garth doesn't know who June is, or at least he says that. The idea that everybody in Gilead knows these people, like they're so infamous that everyone knows who baby Nicole is, and everyone knows who June is, when really in Gilead they try to keep that shit under wraps. They try to cover that shit up. They don't want somebody knowing. They don't want the main part of their people knowing that some handmaid fucking got tons and tons of kids out of Gilead, that some handmaid was successful at doing numerous things that meant that fucking Gilead lost those little battles, that she fucking outwitted them, that she fucking committed these crimes, that she got away with these things and is still alive. They don't want people to know. So I highly doubt that most of the people, even the commanders in Gilead, know who June Osborne is. They, in the first place, would be using most likely her Gilead name, which is Offred. And for a lot of the commanders that don't have direct knowledge of her specific crimes, would be referring to her as part of Mayday or something like that. They would not say that it was some handmaid. They wouldn't say it was Offred. They wouldn't say it was June Osborne. They would be trying to make it sound like, oh, that's the infidels over there doing these awful things. So the idea that Garth is going to necessarily know who June Osborne is not necessarily true. The idea that the rest of the commanders, most of those commanders that were directly affiliated with June, were killed, that's just not the reality. These people, for the most part, I don't think are going to know about it. It's just going to be the people that are directly related to her situations and her cases. So some of the high commanders, because they're in positions of leadership at the time, are going to know about it. And the commanders that are right there in the area she was at might know about it. But anybody outside of that, and like I said, most of those commanders were killed. Even some of those high commanders that weren't part of the Boston area were killed. They're not going to know, really. It's going to be outside of their purview. And the same with Mayday. Mayday doesn't want everybody knowing everything. So you might hear stories about June Osborne in Mayday, but you're not necessarily going to know who June Osborne is. And the name June could be anybody. There's lots of people named June. Anyway, where was I? Okay. Throughout the process that was now about to end Grove's life, Aunt Elizabeth had been magnificent. Let me put my speaker on, so that way if anybody does leave any comments, I will hear it when it comes on. She'd been in college dramatics and had played Hecuba in the Trojan Women, a factoid I had gathered during our early conferences, when she and Helena and Vidala and I had been hammering out the shape of the special woman's sphere in the nascent Gilead. Camaraderie is fostered under such circumstances. Past lives are shared. I took care not to share too much of mine. Elizabeth's on-stage experience had not failed her. She booked an appointment with Dr. Grove as per my orders. Then, at the appropriate moment, she'd scrambled out of the dentist's chair, ripped her clothing, and shrieked that Grove had tried to rape her. Then, weeping distractedly, she'd staggered out in the waiting room, where Mr. William, the dental assistant, was able to witness her disheveled appearance and ravaged state of soul. The person of an aunt is supposed to be sacrosanct. No wonder Aunt Elizabeth was so upset by this violation, was the general opinion. The man must be a dangerous lunatic. Okay, so I'm going to briefly say something about this. This will be a spoiler for the TV show, because it reflects something that happened on the show that I did not realize I had already read in the book. And in the show, like I said earlier, I was taken aback. In the show, Daisy is the one that goes to the fucking dental office and pretends to have been attacked. She doesn't get attacked. And I think her intention at the beginning was that she thought she would be assaulted by him. And that would give her the perfect opportunity to speak out, to yell, to scream, to make sure that everybody knew what was happening. And having more people out there so there are more witnesses makes it more likely that people will be there, they will be part of the situation, they will know what happened, and she'll have, more people to verify what happened. And she's from another country, so she's not used to just shoving this shit down in and not saying anything about it. But she was not counting on Dr. Grove not doing anything to her. Whereas these women, the aunts, they're full-grown adults, and I think they have some knowledge about what Dr. Grove's been doing, and that he's been intentionally targeting young girls. So the idea that an aunt's going to go in there and he's going to mess with her, well, they know that he's probably not, because it's the young girls that he's been messing with. But the aunts are more likely to be believed because they're considered higher. They're considered sacrosanct. They are full-grown adults. They have grown up in this. They have more knowledge than these younger girls do. And there were men around to corroborate what happened to an extent. Which is almost the same thing that Daisy did. But Daisy is a hot-headed teenager that's working with Mayday. They don't know that. She thinks she's helping. She came up with this idea on her own, very spur of the moment. And I don't think she was planning on going to that dentist office that soon. I said I was going to keep this short because I was going to talk about it at the end, but I'll just get it over with now. I'm just saying, I was taken aback when she did that because she lied, because she was not actually being attacked. And I know, like, part of me feels like this makes all these other girls that try to tell people what happened, it makes it more likely that they won't be believed. Anytime that some girl does something like this and they are found to be lying, it like discredits other girls. I mean, but then part of me believes that it wouldn't matter. Like, there's plenty of girls that are telling the truth, that do these things, that are telling the truth, and they're not believed either. And then just the fact that they're not believed discredits them. So part of me feels like it doesn't matter. If no girl ever fucking lied about this shit at all, they would still not be believing these girls. And we've seen that time and time again. The actual rate of girls lying about this stuff is actually extremely low, but we act like it happens all the time, and it doesn't. So, then it's that little bit of like conflict in me. Was what she did right? I don't think so. But under the circumstances, I think her being a hot-headed teenager that wants to do something to protect these girls, and in the spur of the moment when she thought he was going to do something to her and that would give her the ability to actually come out and bring this to light, it turns out that he's not touching her, and then she's having to figure out, what do I do? Spur of the moment. And somebody online had said, oh, well, both Hulda and Agnes were going to have to go back for appointments later that week. She could have just waited and gone with them and been there when that happens to them, and like somehow intervene then and bring it out. But she's not going to be thinking about that stuff. It's spur of the moment. She really thought he was going to be caught red-handed and she would just be able to get it out. And so when it didn't go that way, she's having to think on the fly. What do I do? What do I do? How do I do this? And plus, I don't think she wants to put these girls at more risk. She doesn't know what other girls are going to be in this guy's office and be assaulted by him. So I don't think she's even thinking about that, but also I don't think she wants to put them at more risk of being assaulted by him again. Because that's exactly what would have to happen. Like, waiting for it to be one of these other girls is putting them at more risk. It's putting them in a horrible position that they're going to have to sit through this. Like, just the anxiety of knowing that they might have to go through this all over again is bad enough. I mean, just the anxiety you see her going through. Knowing that he might do this to her, even though he doesn't. Like, you can see the anxiety in her actions before she ever goes into the dentist's office. And the whole time she's there, you can see the anxiety that he might be doing this to her, that he might do this to her. Every time he reaches over her, every time he does something to get close, she's like freaking out. And these girls are dealing with that even more so, only they're led to believe that they have to keep this shit shushed, that they can't say anything. So expecting them to do that later, no, I don't. I understand why she did it. And I do find it weird that when I read this the first time, where the aunt did this, I didn't think much of anything of it. But when Daisy did it, I was taken aback. Like, oh no, you're lying. And I remember like feeling that way. And then when she started like really going crazy screaming, I just went into a fit of laughter and just started laughing about it. I didn't think it was the greatest thing. I was taken aback, but I did start laughing about it. Like, once I realized, okay, this is what she's doing because she feels like this is her recourse. I was like, okay, whatever. I think it's completely ridiculous, which is why I was laughing. But I don't like it. But I also know she's a hot-headed teenager, and she's not about being patient and waiting for the right time and planning everything out. And she's not like Aunt Lydia. She doesn't have that long term, I'm going to wait to make sure things go a certain way. All right, where was I? Good God. Oh my goodness. What time is it? Ooh, I gotta hurry up. I have a movie I'm going to soon. The Back Rooms, I think. All right, so. Okay, I think I read this whole paragraph. A factoid I'd gathered during our early conferences when she and Helena and Vidala had been hammering out the shit. Yeah, we read that part. Past lives are shared. I took care not to share too much of mine. Hopefully, this is where I was. Oh, no. Okay, so I read the paragraph after that. The person of an aunt is supposed to be sacrosanct. I read that part too. The man must be a dangerous lunatic because he would do something so blatantly horrible right in front of all these people with an aunt, which they believe is sacrosanct. Okay, Mr. William testified against Grove at the trial. He was no fool. He'd seen immediately that his boss was doomed. He described Grove's rage at the moment of discovery. Fucking bitch was the epithet applied to Aunt Elizabeth by the fiendish Grove, he claimed. No such words had been uttered, in fact. Grove had said, "Why are you doing this?" But William's account was effective at the trial. Gasps from the listeners, which included the entire population of Ardua Hall. To call an aunt such vulgar words was next door to blasphemy. Under questioning, William reluctantly admitted that he'd had some reason to suspect his employer of irregularities in the past. Anesthetics, he said sadly, could be such a temptation in the wrong hands. Yeah, another TV show spoiler, as soon as I saw that dentist using anesthesia on her for something that he said that was supposed to be a pretty simple standard procedure, I was like, oh shit. This is not good. I knew he was up to no fucking good because a simple standard procedure like that should not require anesthetics. Not whether you're in Canada, the UK, or America, all of them that seemed like it was off. Like he shouldn't be using anesthesia. A simple numbing medicine or something like that would do just fine. Putting her to sleep is not fucking necessary. What could Grove say in his own defense, except he was innocent of the charge, and then quote the Bible on the subject of the well-known false rape accuser, Potiphar's wife? Innocent men denying their guilt sound exactly like guilty men, as I'm sure you have noticed, my reader. Listeners are inclined to believe neither. So every time I hear people say some shit about, oh, if he were really innocent, he wouldn't act this way, or he wouldn't say like blah blah blah. Like they always use these excuses to claim that they would know that a person was innocent. But really it's kind of nonsense because we tend to believe the guilt of people when we want to believe that they're guilty. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with whether they say they're innocent or not. Because isn't that exactly what a guilty person would say? But also, isn't that exactly what an innocent person would say? So we're more likely to take the side of whatever side we want to believe. If we want to believe they're innocent, we're going to believe their innocent claim. If we want to believe that they're guilty, we're going to believe they're guilty. We're going to believe that their innocent claim was a lie. So yeah, can you really use that as a measuring stick to decide whether a guilty person was guilty or an innocent person was innocent when they say that they are not guilty, when they say that they are innocent? We're too biased. I think we have to look more at the facts, look more at the evidence. Grove could hardly admit that he would never have laid a lecherous finger on Aunt Elizabeth, since he was only aroused by underage girls, that was the issue. A lot of people were questioning that he didn't do anything to Daisy. And my thought was that she is from outside of Gilead. He knows she was not raised in this. He knows she is less likely to keep it to herself. But he also knows that all those girls that come to him were raised in this, and they were taught to keep their mouths shut. They were taught that this is shameful. They were taught that it would ruin them, all this other stuff. Daisy doesn't have that training. Daisy has not been raised up like that. Daisy does not have that kind of shame. And so he knew that Daisy was not the person for him to be enacting his disgusting pedophilic desires on. Whereas these other girls, he knew they would probably keep quiet because he knew how they were raised. And I also thought there may be a chance that he may have gotten wind of the fact that there were accusations against him and that he might need to fucking cool it. But I also think he's not likely to do that with some foreign girl that is more likely to say something. In view of Aunt Elizabeth's exceptional performance, I felt it more than fair that she be allowed to conduct the prosecution proceedings at the stadium. Grove was the second to be dispatched. He had to watch as the angel was kicked to death and then literally torn apart by 70 shrieking handmaids. So that is one thing. Like, just the thought of being in this situation and you have to watch the person before you get completely fucking just persecuted to death. Like, that is fucking terrifying. That's just a whole another added layer of terror. But anyway. As he was led out to the field, arms pinioned, he screamed, "I didn't do it, Aunt Elizabeth." The picture of outraged virtue sternly blew the whistle. In 2 minutes, Dr. Grove was no more. Fists were raised, clutching clumps of bloodied hair torn out by the roots. The aunts and supplicants were all present to support the vindication of one of Ardua Hall's revered founders. Off to one side were the newly recruited Pearls. They'd arrived only the day before, so this was a baptismal moment for them. I scanned their young faces, but at that distance could not read them. Revulsion, relish, repugnance. It is always good to know. The pearl of the greatest price was among them. Right after that sporting event we were about to witness, I would place her in the dwelling unit that would be best for my purposes. While Grove was being reduced to a slurry by the handmaids, Aunt Immortelle fainted, which was to be expected. She was always sensitive. I expect she will now blame herself in some way, however despicably he behaved. Grave was nevertheless cast in the role of her father. Commander Judd switched off the television and sighed. A pity, he said. He was a fine dentist. Yes, I said, but sins must not be overlooked simply because the sinner is skilled. Was he really guilty? He asked with mild interest. Yes, I said, but not of that. He would not have been capable of raping Aunt Elizabeth. He was a pedophile. Commander Judd sighed again. Poor man, he said. It is a severe affliction. We must pray for his soul. So, like, this, seriously, not only does he make this comment about he was such a fine dentist, like he did on the show, but he also comments that, oh, this poor man, it's such a severe, like, it really fucking irritates me, the fucking pity that they're offering this guy. Because he was afflicted with pedophilia. Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Such a sad affliction. Like, give me a fucking break. Indeed, I said, but he was ruining too many young girls for marriage. Rather than accepting wedlock, the precious flowers were deserting to the aunts. Ah, he said. Was that the case of the girl Agnes? I thought there must have been something like that. He wanted me to say yes, because then her aversion would not have been to him. Because then her aversion would not have been to him personally. I can't be sure, I said. His face fell. But I believe so. It doesn't do to push him too far. So she was like, I don't know, but maybe, sure. So that way he can't feel so personally affronted that she was just averse to him and not men in general. Your judgments can always be relied on, Aunt Lydia, he said. In this matter of Grove, you've made the best choice for Gilead. Thank you. I pray for guidance, I said. But, to change the subject, I am happy to inform you that baby Nicole has now been safely imported to Gilead. What a coup! Well done, he said. My Pearl girls were very effective, I said. They followed my orders. They took her under their wings as a new convert and convinced her to join us. They were able to buy off the young man who'd acquired an influence over her. Aunt Beatrice did the bargaining, although she was, of course, not aware of baby Nicole's real identity. But you were, dear Aunt Lydia, he said. How did you manage to identify her? My eyes have been trying for years. Did I detect a note of envy, or worse, suspicion? I breezed past it. Nothing that Aunt Lydia needs to worry about. She's got that under control. I have my little ways and some helpful informants, I lied. 2 and 2 do sometimes add up to 4. And we women, myopic as we are, often notice the finer details that may escape the broader and loftier views of men. But Aunt Beatrice and Aunt Dove were told only that they should be on the watch for a specific tattoo that the poor child had inflicted upon herself. And luckily, they found her. Are we needing to go soon? Okay, so I have to cut this soon. Let me see. I think I'm almost done. How soon? Like now. Okay, you guys, I did not finish. So we've got like a page and a half. I'm thinking what I'll do is just get on after I'm done with the movie, which will probably be in like 3 or 4 hours, and I will just finish this off. It's very irregular from what I usually do, but it's just the way it is. And I will talk a little bit about the last couple episodes of the TV show when I start live streaming again later on today. So sorry about that, but we will have to do another one just to finish off. I will write down what page I'm on, and I will probably just start at the beginning of the page because I'm not going to remember where I left off. Where's my pen? Alright, so this is page 254. Very irregular, but gotta go to this video. I mean, I don't have to, but I want to. I want to go and watch the back room, so that's what we're going to do. And I don't go to the theater often, so. Anyway, that's all I got for you. I will see you when I see you. Bye.